Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Terraria and Love. So today I'm trying a new mod. It's called Terrorborn. It's a Dark Souls inspired Terraria mod. And since I love Terraria and Dark Souls, I thought it would be worth giving it a try. This changes a few things, adds some mechanics, stuff like that. When I opened it up, the first thing I noticed was this Twilight Matrix, which enables Twilight mode, making everything more difficult. And being the person I am, of course I immediately activated that. I also noticed this mysterious compass that quote-unquote points to something important in my inventory. There's an arrow above my head that points straight into the ground, but I couldn't really see it because I have this debuff active, so I figured that out later. I also ran into, or rather they ran into me, these new little enemies. I later found out they're called hedgehogs, and they were annoying. This run started out the way any other does. You chop down a few trees. In modded Terraria, I'm chopping down these trees so that I can craft insta-houses. I do pretty much the same thing when playing vanilla Terraria, except I have to build the houses manually, so it takes a little bit more time. One interesting thing to note, that debuff that's floating above my head right now makes it that so I don't recover any health, so the only way I ever get health back is if I eat a health item. Another interesting thing to notice is one of my starter items, which was the King Slime Spawner. Being the person I am, instead of doing proper preparation and getting everything ready and making sure I had proper equipment and weapons, I just fought King Slime prematurely. I really like that popped up gelatinous monarch King Slime. It makes him seem a lot more intense. And despite this being a extra difficulty add-on on top of expert mode, it really doesn't seem too bad. The only thing he's doing extra is shooting a few little spines, and after playing on eternity mode, that's not gonna be enough to really hit me or do any damage. However, because I literally don't have a weapon, this blow dart deals basically no damage, and I have no mobility gear, so I'm just running back and forth like a normal fella. I was not able to beat King Slime, sadly, despite how epic that would have been. But it wasn't even the boss. It was the blue slimes that got me in the end. I started going adventuring for a bit, managed to pick up a boomerang and some lesser terror potions, which I thought looked pretty interesting, but they didn't do anything. The only hint I got is they said, can only be used by those who can shriek. So that immediately made me think that the compass is probably pointing me towards some ability, this shriek, and that would hopefully allow me to generate terror, which is the reason I have the debuff. So when you're in Twilight mode, you have to have at least 3% terror, or you don't regenerate any health and you're significantly slower. So my new quest was to see if I could find this shriek and try to start generating some terror so I didn't have this constant debuff. It was a little bit annoying, didn't really make the game that much more difficult, because if you're adventuring, you usually have enough healing items and you have enough time between encounters that you're able to deal with it. But it still was a little bit more intense. So I traveled through that cave system until I came to the end, and then I just started digging straight down and checking the compass to see how close I was getting, because I was reasonably close to where I was trying to get to. But with only a copper pickaxe, it was taking a really long time, and eventually I just decided to head home. I did some more exploring, this time at night, but it didn't go all that well. I didn't find any helpful items, and I really didn't make it that far, mostly because with no health regeneration, dealing almost no damage, and surrounded by enemies, I couldn't survive for that long. That's when I came up with a genius plan. If I couldn't explore outwards, I'd just dig a tunnel straight down to where the compass was pointing, since it was pointing basically straight down below my feet. Then I remembered that I only had a copper pickaxe, but I was not deterred. At this point, it was pretty late because I filmed all of this last night, and so I just stared blankly into the middle distance while I held down my right finger and did absolutely nothing else for a good amount of time. and a bit longer, and a bit longer. And I got bored with that, so I went adventuring in the overworld once again, and I managed to find a sky island. This was really exciting. I was hoping I could get a lucky horseshoe or a star fury that would really help my damage, but I did not. However, I did get this unique item called a skyburst. Now this is an item that is unique to the mod. The way it works is you hold the up button for 5 seconds, and then when you let go of it, it launches you into the air and gives you a slow falling for a little bit of time. At first I didn't realize how helpful this would be, but then I started using it to get around because I realized you don't have to be stationary, you don't have to be moving up in order to hold the up key. In fact, I could be flying through the air and hold the up key while I was doing that. And so as I continued playing in this mod, I got better and better at navigating with the skyburst, though it was not without incident. Continued exploring across the overland, trying to find some new items, increase my mobility even further, and that's when I came across the first modded structure. This really intrigued me, especially because everything grew a lot darker around me as soon as I started going down the shaft, and I could not destroy any of the blocks. I was intrigued, so I started placing a lot of torches and slowly making my way down. At the bottom, I found all these snow blocks that I was mining through, and I could see the eyes of something. It was just a porcupine, but those spooky eyes hiding in the darkness. And I wondered what else could be hiding in the darkness, so I started placing torches all over. Sure enough, there was a slime that was completely invisible, and so now wary of what could be hiding in the dark, I slowly lit up this cavern. And that's when I noticed a mysterious swinging coffin right above my head. I don't know what just happened there. I turned into a snake for a second. I couldn't get off the S even though there is not an S in coffin. Anyways, I lit up the whole area and spent a little bit trying to figure out how to get this coffin to fall. I was sure this was the start of a boss fight, but I just didn't know how to trigger it. So eventually I just left, filing this away for later adventuring. At this point, I was pretty stacked. I had found a good summoning weapon that would light enemies on fire. I had a decent primary weapon with my enchanted boomerang. I had found some Hermes boots and an aglet that increased my move speed. I had a shiny red balloon that made me jump higher, and I also had the skyburst that was extremely useful. So naturally, I decided it was time to follow the compass all the way to its end and return to my child labor simulator. The mines. Digging up them holes, digging up them holes, yeah, digging up them holes, digging. I don't remember how that song goes entirely, but I do remember it from the movie Holes, which I know you appreciate. After approximately 7 minutes of digging, I came across something new, a modded block called, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, so I'm just going to call it Dimestone? Fancy Stone. I'm going to call it Fancy Stone. Or Spooky Stone. I'm going to call it Spooky Stone because that's what it is in my head. So I found this Spooky Stone, and after digging through that, I found this massive cavern. Now it was pretty dangerous. There were some really long drops, but fortunately I had my skyburst, so I was able to save myself from imminent death multiple times. And eventually, I found something spooky. Yes, I think it was pretty funny that I died immediately after finding that, but on a happier note, I now have my first ability. So, if you didn't catch that text, which it was really quick because I died, I actually had to go back and rewatch my footage to read what it said because I had died and I was laughing at myself instead of reading. So I now have an ability that I can press a key, and when I'm nearby enemies, if I'm holding that key, I'll generate terror, which is pretty nice. I now no longer had that debuff that I've been carrying around with me, which meant that I could regenerate life, and I was faster, and I dealt more damage. All good things. But now I wasn't really sure what to do, until I saw this skull man, who had a lot of dialogue.
Hello there. You must be a fellow seeker of this anomaly I've detected in this area. My spells have picked up very large amounts of terror emanating nearby.
And he goes on and on and on and on and on, and explains a few concepts and calls you an idiot. Long story short, terror is a thing that exists, and there are some shrines that will give you cool abilities. Doesn't really give you a purpose for all of the wanton slaughter you're doing throughout this run, but hey, who needs justification for massacre? Please don't take that out of context, oh my goodness. Mr. Skeleton Face mentioned that the first place I should go was on the surface of the snow biome, and I knew right where that was, so I headed back here, but it didn't really seem like anything had changed, and so I kind of just stood around and stared at it for a little bit. I tried activating my Terror Shriek ability, but I still wasn't quite sure how to use it. Later, I looked online and found out that the Terror Shriek is actually how you trigger this boss fight, but I wasn't sure how it worked at that point because the mod isn't really great at explaining concepts to you or how to use things, so it just kind of flailed around for a little bit and then headed back home. I wanted to fight King Slime and get a rematch now that I actually had some gear that I could fight him with. Unfortunately, I forgot that the boss summon that I had wasn't an infinite summon, it was just a one-time use summon, so King Slime would actually not come back to me. So I built this boss fight arena, and that's where my adventuring ended for the day. So that is episode whatever number this is of Terraria and Love, coming to you live with a brand new, slightly spooky mod. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.